All right. Hi, everybody. So I am here to talk about social media, screens, access to technology, screen time, the whole shebang. When parenting experts talk about media and screens, we tend to talk mostly about how to restrict them and about screen time in general. But I really want to focus more on content for today. So much like maybe every parent in the US and in the world, in the middle of crisis parenting as the pandemic started and we had no idea how long it would last or how it would play out, I got very lax in my screen time limits. And I stand by that because it was what we needed then. Even through the remainder of last year's school year, the 2020-2021 school year, our kids were in and out of in-person learning. Many districts near me only did in-person learning towards the end of the school year. So I did feel that it was more important that kids stay connected through social media than I would have in the past. Most of us are now in a different position. Even families who I know chose to keep their children home for learning have gone back to in-person. So if you are in that situation where your kids are able to be with other kids throughout the day for typical school days, I do feel now is a good time to revisit some of those screen time rules for your house. Professionally, I've started to see something that makes me nervous. It's certainly not new, but in light of all the media that has been out there lately about social media and the impact it's having on body image and our teens and mental health in general, there was a previous employee from one of the social media groups who leaked some research. And none of this should be shocking, right? Comparing ourselves can be really detrimental. So it's really made me sort of rethink what I'm doing in my house. I also want to acknowledge the blessing of social media and all the technology at our fingertips. Look at what I'm doing now. I'm going to spend 3 minutes with all of you and we're going to have an important conversation. That's not something I could do in the 90s or the 80s. Our parents, when raising us, if they were curious about different issues, they'd have to find a book. Oh my goodness, now I wrote a book. I think books are great, but having information that's important and helpful at our fingertips is also a blessing. Being able to connect with people who live in different states and different time zones and who you don't see at your school through social media for our kids is a blessing. So I think preaching sort of abstinence, right, of social media and just saying don't give it to your kids until they're in high school isn't always realistic. And instead teaching kids how to be educated consumers is really awesome. So kids can Google anything that is interesting to them most often. Even school computers don't always have a lot of firewalls on them because teachers use YouTube for appropriate resources. So they can't just block the website. So I have seen in my professional work, kids get access to things that they're not ready to understand yet. And that can be really difficult and it can lead to dangerous behaviors. There are definitely YouTube's, social media pages and whatnot that have a lot of negative and inaccurate information out there about eating disorders, about cutting, and saying it's not dangerous, which it can be and is. So something I'm doing in my home is tightening up my parent controls. So through different search engines such as Google, you can use parent controls to limit what your kids can see. And I did my research. I had thought that if I was letting my kids use YouTube at all, I didn't have a lot of control. Through getting accounts and using parent controls, there is some more control in there. So I'm working through that and I'll update you guys. But something I did last week is I had a really great conversation with my kids about how on YouTube there's all these tutorials and that can be awesome, right? If my sink is backing up and I think the disposal might be broken, before I call the plumber, I can watch a tutorial and maybe fix it myself. That's a great resource. But do I know that the person on YouTube actually knows what they're talking about? Could they maybe encourage me to do something that will actually break my disposal, which wasn't broken and was just clogged? Yes. So I gave them this example. If I was sitting in my room one day and I look out the window and I see somebody cut down a tree and I was like, wow, that looks awesome. I want to cut down trees. I'm pretty smart. I have a master's and 3/4 of a master's, 5/6 of a master's, or I don't know what you call it. I can make a tutorial for tree cutting, and I go to Home Depot and I use my credit card, which I have access to, and I buy a chainsaw. I can go on YouTube and I can try to show someone how to cut down a tree. Am I an expert? No. Is watching me and then following my rules potentially dangerous? Big time. So that is the example I gave my kids, and that was pretty clear cut and they understood it. So what we did is there now is no YouTube on anyone's personal device in my house. I did not cut YouTube out of their lives because it's very important to them. And again, there is helpful information. My daughter likes to use clay beads and make bracelets, and right now she's doing it for a fundraiser. So I don't mind, and I actually encourage her to watch those tutorials. So now the rule in our house is YouTube must be watched on the family room TV so that I can eavesdrop and overhear. So we're taking it back to the 80s, right? If I was watching something inappropriate, most often one of my parents would notice, right? Sure, I was home alone and had all kinds of things, and parents might have been more hands off, but now YouTube is not something that is watched upstairs in their bedrooms. And I do not allow my kids to watch upstairs in their bedrooms, but it happens because life gets busy and somehow it ends up there. So I just want to be transparent. So that was the big takeaway and the big change we've made in our house this week, is just being careful about the content and what they have access to. I'm now going to try a few different things with parent controls on search engines and on YouTube, and then I'll report back. Curious what everyone else is doing in their house.